Hey everybody, it's Austin Ward down here at Lettermen Row headquarters hanging out with my man, Beanie Wells. It's another Letterman Live brought to you by Byers Auto. You know, the weather's starting to heat up. It's at May, but it's a quiet time. Like if it's so weird right now to not have like day-to-day football to break down. I don't know. Do players like May, Beanie? Do you want to be around the guys more? What's this time of year like?
You know, when you're in the locker room, you definitely love May. It's just working out. At your discretion. Obviously, you have the set workouts and times you're supposed to be there, but it's not like you got meetings to worry about. And it's the summertime. I mean, it's a time for you to get ready to gear up to go back home for a little bit, just chill out, get a nice little break. I loved May.
It seems like the first time you go through it, right? Take me back, like rookie camp, OTAs. What was that first transition like for you with Paris Campbell? What are these guys going through now the first time?
Oh man, that was a whirlwind for me. I was one of those guys that I had to wait out of OTAs because I didn't graduate, and they had that rule in place then. Ohio State being on quarter, so it was a little bit of a delay. So I didn't graduate, but I was still out in Arizona. I went out to move with Larry Fitzgerald. He set me up with a trainer. He made sure I was working my tail off. I ended up losing like 20 pounds from May to the time from the time I was drafted, which is in the end of April, to the time we had mandatory minicamp there in June. And I worked my ass off, but once I got there for the minicamp, it was a whirlwind. Seeing guys like Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden, Darnell Dock, Carlos Dansby, seeing all these guys, it was an adjustment that, I didn't get a chance to, have OTAs with those guys and experience it like the other guys did. So for me, it was a little bit of a whirlwind, understanding the playbook, understanding how to be a pro. Definitely different.
Yeah. Well, that's this quiet time. We're trying to fill some of that too right here at Lettermen Row and on Lettermen Live brought to you by Byers Auto. It's been defensive line week for us as we keep looking at Ohio State all year round. And one thing, we're going to have a little fun later on. We're going to bring in and talk recruiting. Beanie and I are going to draft our all-time defensive line team at Ohio State. It's going to be competitive. You guys can weigh in and see who does a little bit better. But Bean, who's the best defensive end you played, defensive lineman you played against, teammate, on the field with? Who comes to mind first, the best defensive lineman you
at Ohio State?
Anywhere.
Oh, my.
What makes a good one?
Oh, shoot. I played against Haloti Ngata, he was phenomenal. He was one of those guys, just stout, run stuffer, that you knew it was going to be hard to get past him. He was taking two guys up. I played against Vince Wilfork. But if I got to say...
You're talking run stuffers. That's what goes through. All right.
No question. I'm a running back, so those are the guys I'm worried about. I mean, it's like one hand and you're down with those guys. If I had to say who's the best one that I played against, I'm going to say Haloti because he was a little bit younger than Vince was. At that time, Vince was in the back end of his career.
Right.
But Haloti was an animal. I'm talking like double, triple teams. There was no blocking it.
See, I wanted to get you off your game and just throw some run stuffers at you so when we get this draft started, I've got some advantage.
All right.
It's a little mind game. But I'm going to let you pick first, all right? We're going to go back and forth. We need four. We're going to play in a 4-down front.
Okay.
I'm going to let you go first. All time, we're drafting an Ohio State team. Not just, we did Urban Meyer, the all-urban team. This is anybody you want. And you got the number one pick.
I got the number one pick, and I'm going off of production. And this guy was by far the best individual, most athletic, most dominant guy. When he wanted to cut it on, Vern Gostin. I'm taking him above the Bosas, anybody. He was amazing.
Okay, I did not think that you'd go that way for number one pick.
Didn't have the league success, but Ohio State, beast.
You leaving me both Bosas, and then I see some people in the background there. Number one overall for me, I'm going Big Daddy.
Big Daddy. Okay.
I'm going to start in the middle.
I did miss that one.
You talk about the run stuffers. Right. I'm going to start from there because I know that you've left me some pass rushers.
I did.
I know I'm going to get one coming back around. So I'm going Big Daddy there in the middle.
Big Daddy Dan. Oh, how did I miss that one right there?
That's why we do it live on Lettermen Live.
I mean,
sometimes I threw you off your game. I'm taking credit for that.
Straight off the cuff. All right, you want to go Big Daddy? Give me Will Smith. I got Vern and Will Smith. Give me those two guys.
Wow. Okay, so you're coming after the passer pretty good there. I'm going to make sure that I can get one of the Bosas here. I like Nick better. I know that last year, final year with Ohio State, cut short with the core muscle injury. But when he was at his best, I think he's slightly better than Joey. He's still going to have to go out and prove it, obviously, and he didn't get to finish with those numbers. But I want Nick. I bought the hype that he was better than his brother, and when he was healthy, he looked like it.
All right. I'll give you that one there, man. That's a very good pick. I'm going to go down on the defensive line, interior. And this guy, he may not ring a lot of bells to you guys, but I played with him, and the dude was an All-American, Quinn Pitcock.
Okay.
Quinn Pitcock. I'll take Quinn Pitcock there as my defensive tackle.
All right, so then I know that I'm going to have another defensive end available to me, and I feel good about. You can't take them all. I'm going to go inside again here. I'm going to take Big Hank, Jonathan Hankins.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm going to put 2 big guys in there, and I thought about this, Beanie, when I knew we were going to do this, because I think Draymond is underrated. I thought he was underrated in the draft. You could do a lot of things. I could move him around. I could play sort of that rushman package. I wanted Draymond. I'm not going to wind up taking him because Hank's there, and I've got 2 really big athletic dudes on the inside. So Jonathan Hankins and Big Daddy got a tackle for me, and I've got one Bosa now. Who else am I going to have there on the edge?
You can have the other one because I got my 2 defensive ends right now.
No, that's right. All right.
I got, this guy was phenomenal. He's a beast. Had a motor, probably the highest motor I've ever seen out of a guy at Ohio State, and a lot of you fans will agree. Cam Hayward. My other defensive tackle.
That's a really good one. All right, you got some talent there. I guess if you're going to make me do it, I'm going to go 2 Bosas. I'm going to feel pretty good about it. The other guy that I was considering, if it got to this, John Simon. We didn't throw Vrabel in there. Luke Fickell. I mean, there are so many options.
Names, yeah.
I thought I'd feel good about if I'd have left with any of those guys. I'd have liked it. And I mean, you look at Vrabel with the numbers that he put up.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Sometimes that might be my recency bias. I watched both of those Bosa brothers play. I know how special they were. I didn't really get a chance like in the 90s when Vrabel and Fickell to be watching those guys play. All I've heard are the stories and seen the highlights. And you've got a little bit of that 2000s going where you know what those guys were doing. So you could make a team going back to the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
It's whatever you saw is probably
There's
the way
so many guys we left off this list, but right off the cuff, I tried to go with names of guys that I played with, that I seen playing. So I'll still stand on that. I'll still stand on those guys.
You don't want to have your phone blowing up after this.
No, not at all. But I would have took Big Daddy Dan first, had I remembered.
Well, see, the next time we do it, we'll just slip the order around, and I'll let you have them. We'll every summer when we go through defensive line week at Lettermen Row, we'll keep doing it. Maybe it'll change. Chase Young could be in that mix next year. Tyreek Smith is on the rise. I mean, it's about to get a lot harder to keep building that team.
Some very good talent. Zach Harris.
And
we're going to get out of him. Yeah.
And you got to put Larry Johnson in charge of that, too.
Yeah, my gosh.
How important is having him around, you think?
I mean, it's so critical to Ohio State and their success, not just from a recruiting aspect, but from a developmental standpoint. I mean, you look at the guys that he's coached in his career, not just at Ohio State. I mean, you go back and you look at, the Tamba Ali's of the world, the very good pass rushers that went on to have success at the next level. I mean, he's coached them.
Yeah, he's done it. It's great for Ohio State to still have Larry Johnson around. He's a big part of defensive line week here at Lettermen Row. Kind of just kicking it a little with Beanie, keeping it low key on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Not a whole lot going on, but we'll keep doing this all summer. Keep picking teams, keep hanging out with Beanie, do some Buck IQs. Thanks for having him coming in. Now we're going to throw it over to Berm, get an update over there on the recruiting stuff here going on late May for Ohio State on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. All right, now we bring in my main man, Berm, to give us the Ohio State recruiting update. As I said last week, on the field stuff is cooling down a little bit, but the recruiting trail, that action for Ohio State never really seems to slow down. And since it's defensive line week at Lettermen Row, Berm, let's just start there. What does the board look like? What's the next piece that could fall into place for the Buckeyes up front?
Yeah, I mean, the recruiting board is interesting on the defensive line and the defensive side of the ball in general. There are 8 commitments in the 2020 class, and only one of them are a defensive player. That's defensive back legend Cavazos. The 2021 class, of course, has 5-star defensive lineman Jack Sawyer already committed, but the Buckeyes are going to be looking for probably 4 total defensive linemen in 2020, similar to the haul that they had in the 2019 class. And it starts in Ohio with Darion Henry, the Cincinnati Princeton defensive end, defensive tackle, 6'6", 265 pounds. He's sort of the new mold of defensive lineman that they want, somebody that can play in or out. And, what we've seen in the last few years is Larry Johnson rotating in a number of guys, but they've always been sort of, you'd have your true defensive ends and then your true one-tech, almost defensive tackle types. And that it seems to be something they're going away from and looking for, just to bring in 8 or 9 guys they can rotate that are all the same. And I think they've realized that there are a lot of really good, really athletic players around the country who are in that 6'4", 275-pound range where they can mix it up and do whatever they want. And that starts with Darion Henry. Beyond that, it's sort of an interesting few weeks coming up for Larry Johnson and the Buckeyes, heading into camp season in June, and it's a time of year where Larry Johnson really gets to see who he likes. He's worked with Darion Henry for the last 2 years. He knows everything he needs to know about him. But the rest of the guys on the board are all still sort of up in the air, because Larry Johnson wants to have his hands on these guys and work with them in person at the June camps at Ohio State.
Berm, I know I get this question a lot. How much longer will Larry Johnson stay at Ohio State? Nobody can truly answer that except him, and I know that he's in good health. He still remains passionate about what he's doing, but he's 67 years old. You don't have to make a prediction here, but when this comes to an end for Larry Johnson at Ohio State, I know that's going to be significant. How much is it already a factor when Ohio State has to constantly answer questions about how long he'll be around, since there is no definitive timeline for that?
Yeah, that's a question they're asked by recruits and recruits' families all the time. I mean, the reality is Larry Johnson has said privately and publicly that he's a guy that thinks he can coach for a handful more years. He looks great. He looks younger than ever. I mean, last year he joked last summer at a camp about how he was going to come out for the season with his head shaved and look a lot younger and grow the goatee, and he ended up doing that. And you can tell he's a guy that's kind of been revitalized and feeling freshened up by the program change, and he's incredibly important to Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, and whatever timeline he wants to operate on. He obviously loves being a grandfather. He loves being able to have a job where he's secure enough in his position at Ohio State that he doesn't need to be on the road 40 weeks a year. He picks his spots. He goes out and finds the defensive linemen that he wants to teach and the young men that he wants to develop. And I think that having that freedom in Columbus has really helped make this a longer-term plan than I think it was when he signed on in 2013.
Yeah, talking Ohio State recruiting with Berm here on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Getting away from that defensive line to wrap things up, I guess the biggest maybe development right now for the Buckeyes, looking at that running back position, and plans have changed a little bit for Kendall Melton. What's going on there with the five-star running back?
Yeah, I mean, Kendall had gone on record a few weeks back talking about LSU and how that was going to be his first trip, and how that official visit he was planning for June 7th to Baton Rouge was important because that was a team he was really feeling right now, and that he wanted to make that his first trip. Well, now his first trip is going to be to Ohio State, and he said that's just because of timing. So you wonder, was he really feeling LSU that much? Is it that important if he's the first trip or the last trip? And I think what we're going to see is accelerated timeline here from Kendall Melton, very similar to what happened with Mikael Sherman and Julian Fleming and a number of these other five-star guys that we're talking about committing in December are now all starting to push that up. They've realized that there's a real value in taking official visits in June and committing before the start of their senior season and then shutting it down and allowing themselves to focus on their high school teams and their early enrollment plans. And so for Kendall Melton and the Buckeyes, he is one of the top two running back targets with Pajama Robinson out of Tucson, Arizona. And I think the one interesting nuance type thing that I could look at with this change of plans is that maybe, just maybe, if Melton knows he wants to be at Ohio State, he's putting himself in a position to walk through that door before Pajama Robinson takes his official visit on June 14th. So if you're looking for a silver lining and this is good news, then that would be it. I think that obviously it was important for him to get back to campus quickly. He just visited Ohio State on the first weekend of April. So getting back twice in 2 months is very important for Tony Alford and Ryan Day. He is 1A and 1B with Pajama Robinson as far as what they're looking for at running back. He is the bell cow, 6'2", 220-pound kid that is a difference maker the minute he steps on campus. And I think that it is an obvious priority for the Buckeyes to get one of those two guys, Melton or Pajama Robinson, locked up by the end of the summer so that they can focus then on building depth with a second running back in the class of 2020.
What's your crystal ball say right now for those guys?
I honestly do believe that Kendall Melton is going to end up at Ohio State, but I know that the reality is that the people in Georgia are extremely confident that he's going to end up at Georgia, and the people at LSU are extremely confident he's going to end up at LSU. So what this comes down to is how well can the Buckeyes recruit him on the opportunity to step in and play a lot as a freshman at Ohio State, which he will absolutely be required to do, to show him the Ohio State Business School and the Fisher School of Business and how important that is in his development. But also in making sure, if I was recruiting him, I would be making sure that he knows that Georgia is the favorite to land five-star running back Marshawn Lloyd out of Maryland. I think that the Buckeyes are obviously aware of these things and are working to make sure he knows that he's the priority, and they want him to have that first crack at entering that class and really starting to help the class, which we believe will add Julian Fleming next Friday. It will really start to pick up momentum heading into the summer.
Gotcha. That's Berm. He's the best in the business covering Ohio State recruiting. Hanging out with us on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Appreciate Beanie as well. Beanie Wells, as we went through and talked about defensive line play. I'm just Austin Ward, and this has been Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. We'll see you next week.